My name's Joan, I'm your games mistress, and here's a little bit about why the playful is political. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you already know that around here we define playfulness as making a sincere effort to succeed at something while at the same time being okay with the possibility that those efforts might fail. Playfulness is essential for creativity, innovation, authenticity, connection, for a lot of things, really. A lot of things that this world really is really in need of. And, I need a change of scene. So, up until today, I've been trying to keep things nonpartisan around here. And it's not because I don't have strong political views, I do. It's because I wanted this to be a place where people with different beliefs can all feel welcome. Also, it's the internet, which means the moment anybody expresses any kind of political view at all, it immediately reduces them in the eyes of their audience to one of the precisely two kinds of things that are allowed to exist in the game of politics: a friend or an enemy. But in this case, I'm using the word political in a slightly different sense. Have you ever heard the phrase, the personal is political? My interpretation of that is that our personal behavior, the way that we treat people from day to day, whether it's friends, family, co-workers, or strangers, all these personal choices that we make all the time, sometimes even without thinking about it, these things can affect the greater good of society, which makes them political. So whether you like it or not, the consequences of your actions, big and small, are always going to ripple outwards, affecting everybody you come into contact with, and by extension, everybody they come into contact with, and so on. And that's what I mean when I say that the personal is political. And yes, I believe almost every human being can benefit from the joy, the challenge, the connection, and the catharsis that you can get from playing games together with people you like, and I want everyone to have the chance to receive those benefits, regardless of their voting patterns. But the thing is that when we approach games playfully, when we come to the table together to play and struggle and laugh and win and lose, it changes us in certain particular ways that can profoundly affect how we see ourselves and our place in society, and that makes playfulness political. For a start, consider what it implies when you sit down with a group of people for the purpose of playing a game. Every single one of you could be doing something productive with your time, but instead, you've deliberately chosen to do something just because it gives you joy and the chance to spend some time together in the same space. In a time when we're supposed to be hustling every waking second, and we mostly just use devices to talk to each other, that can actually mean a lot right there. Next, consider that in order to play a game, you actually have to participate. You're not just passively watching something, you're deliberately shaping it. You're not being entertained by some stranger. You and your friends are entertaining each other, kind of like how humans used to do long ago. And you're probably not even paying each other money to do it. How's that for subversive? I mean, sure, somebody has to provide a place to be, and it might be a good idea to have something on hand to eat and drink, and the game itself might have cost you some money to buy it at some point, but everybody has to eat and drink anyway, and lots of people can just dig up an old copy of some game from long ago and use that. The tabletop game industry does exist, but they're so much smaller than the electronic game industry. So unless you're some kind of enthusiast who has to collect all the latest and greatest titles, having a tabletop game night can actually be kind of anti-consumerist. But here's the really subversive part. Consider what it means that you're competing against one another just for fun. Contemporary society in these parts is built on competition, or so we're told. Want to get into a good school? Gotta be the best. Want to make it in the world of athletics and academia? Gotta outperform the competition. Want to succeed in business or politics? It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and you've got to be better than the rest just to have a chance at survival. This is how we view competition now. It's win or die, and all the big stories that you hear are always about somebody who won. You never hear about the losers. But here's the thing about a competition. It is an event in which there are more losers than winners. Otherwise, it's not a competition. which means that most of the people in a society that's built on the basis of competition are going to have to be losers. And being a loser in that arena isn't just a matter of scoring fewer points and saying, cool, let's play again. It can mean the difference between having a good career that might let you start a family someday, or a dead-end life with no prospects and no hope of escape. Competition is legitimately terrifying now because the stakes are so high that there's absolutely no room for failure, which means there's no room for experimentation or creativity, or, of course, playfulness. This is not the case for rich people, of course. A billionaire dilettante can just buy some company, proceed to do a terrible job of managing it, and then sell it off for maybe more money than they paid for it. Or maybe less, they don't care. It doesn't even matter. When a big corporation goes under, even if it's because of criminal activity, the rich people behind it almost never face any real consequences. They can pretty much do anything they want and never actually have to be afraid of competition. The only way the rest of us ever get to experience that feeling is at the game table. And most people who aren't rich have spent their entire lives being conditioned to fear competition as they would fear death. You know the old joke about how most people are more frightened of public speaking than they are of dying, which means that if they're at a funeral, they'd rather be the person in the casket than the one delivering the eulogy? Convincing a friend or a family member to try a new game can be like convincing a friend who's afraid of heights to go skydiving with you. And all you game enthusiasts out there know exactly what this pain feels like. We try so hard to convince them. We tell them how great the game is, how much we enjoyed playing it, how much other people have enjoyed playing it too. We'll quote reviews at them. We'll promise them that it'll be fun. We'll tell them not to be so whatever we think they're being. We beg, we plead, and we get so confused and so frustrated at their reluctance. Why won't they just trust us? Why are they so scared to play games? And the thing is, the only reason why we ask those questions is because we, the enthusiasts, have forgotten what it actually feels like for them. We've forgotten that for someone who hasn't done this yet and doesn't have any context for it, sitting down to play a game feels a lot like sitting down for a job interview. And sure, there are a few unusual people who can come into a situation like that with genuine confidence, but most people find that kind of situation absolutely terrifying because they have been punished for coming up short in competitions and tests and examinations over and over again all their lives. There's so much fear and anxiety tied up in our ideas about competition that many of us have lost the ability to disentangle them from our ideas about play. And the result is that today, for all intents and purposes, play is dead. And the loss of play has profound effects on all of us. Kids who don't get to play have a harder time developing boundaries and empathy, and they grow up to find that they have a harder time being vulnerable and authentic, which takes away their hopes for connection and intimacy, as well as their capacity for creativity and innovation. And grown-ups suffer from all the same problems if they don't feel like they're allowed to play. But here's the other thing we enthusiasts know, and for me, it's the reason why I keep trying. Whenever we do manage to help someone to get past that, when they are able to set aside their fears and soldier through the inevitable rules explanation that's always frustrating for them and always takes way longer than it should, once they actually get to the point where they can feel like they're genuinely playing, they get to experience something that nowadays is reserved only for the richest and most privileged people in the world. They get to be fearless. They get to try their best. They get to come up short and still enjoy themselves. They get to make mistakes in front of their friends and not get rejected for it. They get to feel what it's like to be accepted for who you are, even when who you are isn't perfect. They get to do the one thing that they've been relentlessly taught that they must never, ever do. They get to be seen to try and fail. And then they get to say, that was interesting. Can we try again? This does not happen in normal life anymore. If you fail the exam, you know that your parents and your teachers aren't going to respect you just for trying, and they're probably not going to let you try again. If you stumble in the job interview, you're not going to get a second shot at it. If your social media post turns out to be way more cringe than you realized, it's all over for you. The lesson gets repeated, brutally, endlessly, and we have no choice but to learn. Make one mistake, and we're as good as dead. Unless we're rich, of course, then we can be insulated from the consequences. Or unless we're playing a game. Now, if you think I'm overstating the case here for how games can change the way we behave in the real world, this is not just a theory. There was a recent experiment in the UK with about 400 kids, and it found that playing chess had a number of effects, but the most notable of these was decreased risk aversion. In other words, the kids who regularly played were significantly less afraid to take chances than the ones who didn't play. They weren't indiscriminate about which risks they took. They actually got choosier about those, but they were more willing to try things when the opportunity presented itself. And I think the researchers missed something in their findings because, well, they're researchers and not necessarily game experts. This change in risk aversion could not possibly have happened because the game taught them to do probability analysis or something, because chess doesn't have any of that. Chess is totally deterministic. If they were playing Yahtzee or something, that might have taught them how to play the odds, but they weren't playing Yahtzee, they were playing chess. So the game itself could not have been the thing that taught them that a risky move can also be a good move. So, how did they learn that? My theory is that the real risk they were taking wasn't about any particular move they were making out on the board. The risk that they were taking was sitting down in the first place to try their skill against an opponent who was there to do the same. Every single time you do that, every time you put yourself out there and take the risk of losing because you didn't play as well as your opponent, it gets a little easier than it was last time. Because if you win, your confidence goes up, knowing that next time you might win again. And if you lose, you don't have to suffer through any serious consequences. You can just play another game, and the game comes with a fresh start right from the very beginning. When people are less afraid to take risks, they become more willing to try to change things and entertain new ideas. When people are willing to allow themselves to be vulnerable and fallible around people they like and trust, they can truly feel seen and loved and appreciated for who they really are. When we play together, when we win and lose together, we feel more seen and less alone. And that makes us feel like we could make a difference, or at least like it might be worth trying. That's not just political. That's potentially revolutionary. So, I've known for a very long time now that what I wanted to do with my life was to bring more of that into this world. And I believed for just as long that a rebirth of play could absolutely make it a reality. So I've spent most of my life trying to figure out how to make it happen. And at first I thought the problem was that the games that people played were the wrong ones. They're too heavy, or they're too insubstantial, or they exclude too many players, or they don't do this or that. So I worked as a game designer and developer, figuring that eventually I could help to create the games that would break through and bring play back to the center of human culture, and bring play back to life. And it didn't take me very long to realize that I was okay at game design, but not that good. Fortunately, there are a lot of truly brilliant people who are thoroughly dedicated to creating fantastic games of every possible description right now. So I resolved instead to become an ambassador for play, basically to support them. I spent some time as a retailer, selling games to people based on what I thought would work for them, and I'm still working as a kind of sommelier for games and as an instructor at a board game cafe, choosing games to suit people's tastes and moods and teaching them the rules so that they won't have to struggle with the rule book. I spent years playing, teaching, writing, doing speaking engagements and events, and the whole time I always thought if I could just introduce a person to that one perfect game that would hit their sweet spot, just the right emotional stakes, not too low, not too high, I'd be able to open their hearts to the freedom and authenticity and happiness that comes from play. And over the years I actually did help thousands of people to have a good time at play, even though many of them felt anxious at first that this might not be for them. Later, I thought that if I could create videos that would provide all the right resources, then all around the world, people who watch them would be able to cast off their fear of failure and join us at the table, born again into a happier, healthier, more playful world. And then, about a month ago, not too long before my 50th birthday, I realized for the first time in my life that all this time I've been going about this whole thing completely wrong. I've spent decades making a classic blunder. When it comes to big problems like climate change or poverty or racism, our society has this tendency to individualize the problem. We put it on individuals, saying that they're just going to have to make better choices if they want a better world, all the while ignoring the fact that we live in a system that seems deliberately designed to make it really, really difficult to make those good choices. We build all these car-dependent suburbs that effectively make it impossible to manage without an automobile, and then we shame the people who live there for their individual carbon footprint. We wag our fingers at poor people for making bad dietary choices when they have to live in food deserts where it's super hard to get fresh produce. We tell ourselves that all we have to do is not call people these horrible names, and racism just won't exist anymore. And it's not that individual choices don't matter. Of course they do. Making the decision not to use hateful slurs, or to try to use your bike when it's feasible. These things do matter, but the reality is that these problems, at their core, are structural and systemic. The death of play is the same. The human race didn't just magically lose interest in games that you don't play on a screen back in the mid-'80s for the first time in its existence. People have been shamed and punished and conditioned to live their lives in a way that is incompatible with playfulness. And yes, there will still be a few weirdos at the fringes, usually people with a lot of privilege to insulate them, who will get super into games anyway, but no matter how entertaining and persuasive and passionate those weirdos get here on YouTube, play will not come back as a result of individual decisions to try to be more playful. It will only come back if we make a collective effort as a society to change the structures and systems that turn human beings away from play. That is what I mean when I say that the playful is political. So, next question. What do we do about this? Answer, for now at least, I honestly don't know. I've spent the last month just feverishly trying to come up with some kind of idea of where to start. I've come up with a few ideas, here's 5 of them. And I really do want to go into more detail about these, but we're out of time. Gotta be honest with you, it's pretty rough coming to realize that you've been taking the wrong approach your whole life to the thing that matters most to you. It's the kind of thing that makes you just want to start all over, throw everything away so that you can have a clean slate. I mean, I guess I could just focus on the deeper sociopolitical stuff and really dig into it. Make one of those YouTube channels where they talk about the kinds of issues that even people who hate games will have to agree are serious and important and worth talking about. Sephie would never get on board with that, though, and neither would a lot of the viewers and the backers who signed on to see fun, entertaining, useful videos where they learn how to have a better time at the game table with their friends. I mean, I owe it to you to keep doing that. But I owe it to you also to not ignore this big realization that I've just come to. I can't ignore the political stuff anymore. Is there some way that I could do both? Some way I could signal that a particular video is going to be digging into a certain particular kind of thing and it's not going to involve the usual stuff? I mean, Oh. Well, hey, why not? I mean, Sephie can do short videos. Why can't I? That sounds great. So her shorts can be about just all fun all the time, and then my shorts can be all serious all the time, and then we'll keep doing our regular stuff. It's genius. Okay. I have to go. I have to get to work on this. Right. Okay. Thank you all for watching. This video and everything that we do around here is brought to you by the kind support of our lovely patrons. If you think that we're onto something here, and if you can afford to help us do more of it, please do point your browser over to patreon.com/Joan the Games Mistress. You can make a big difference helping us to make these videos, and you can get some kind of cool perks too, so click on over and join us. If you'd like to entertain your friends and family at a game night, but you're not quite sure which games would be best or how to teach them, you can hire me at joanthegamesmistress.com. I'll help you figure all that stuff out and make sure everybody gets to have a good time. And if you're interested in role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, I can also get your first adventure up and running. Now, figuring out how to approach this mission of bringing play back from the dead is going to be the toughest challenge of my life, and I'm going to need to work with a lot of different people and a lot of different disciplines to have any chance of making a meaningful contribution to the eventual success of that mission. And finding those people and getting them to return my messages is probably going to require at least a reasonably large platform. So please do click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell to make sure that you'll be told whenever we post new content. And most importantly of all, there's something that I'm going to need your help with. I need to know who's out there who I need to get in contact with when it comes to these big questions involving play. I'm going to need to talk to game experts, historians, academics, psychologists, social critics. I'm going to need all the information and all the perspectives I can get. So if there's anybody you know of out there who's an academic in one of those fields and also loves games and might have a piece of that puzzle, please tell me about them in the comments below. Remember though, mean comments get deleted, mean people get banned, so play nice. Your turn.